Group projects. In my experience, you either hate them or you hate them. So why do professors keep assigning these instruments of torture? Despite the headaches, there is very real skill building and learning that happens over the course of a group project as long as it's done well. And the skill gained from group projects, teamwork, communication, leadership, compromise, collaboration, these are essential in the real world regardless of your profession. So how can we push through the I'm going to share some tips for before the project starts, during the project, and after the project's over so that you can get that next group project from oh no to wow, that actually wasn't so bad. So first, have a planning meeting. This is before any actual project work begins. Many student groups want to skip this step and jump right into working on the thing because they just want to get it done. But this is often where things start going wrong. So what should this planning meeting look like? First, have each group member read the assignment instructions again carefully. Make sure you're all on the same page about what you are supposed to be doing. If you have any questions or there is some confusion or there is some conflict about what the assignment instructions mean, this is your chance to ask your prof. Save yourself from having to go back and fix things later because you realize you misunderstood the instructions. The second thing that should happen in this planning meeting is make sure you have some way of open communication among group members established. Maybe this means exchanging phone numbers so that you can text each other. Maybe this is opening a Slack channel. Just make sure you have an easy, open way to communicate with one another while you all are working on this project. The third thing you should do in this planning meeting is really take some time to identify the strengths and interests of each group member. What you don't want to do is jump into just saying, oh, who wants to do this? You do this, you do this, you do this. And you aren't maximizing what you have. Everyone comes to the table with things to contribute and share. And the best groups let those strengths and interests shine. So a good approach is to first have group members individually brainstorm for themselves some key skills or interests they have that are relevant to the group project. And then they have something ready in hand to share, and you can kind of go around the group and have each person share their interests and skills so that nobody feels like they're being put on the spot. The fourth thing that happens in this planning meeting is now that you've established each person's strengths and interests, you start to distribute roles and tasks. So there are many different roles you may need, and these vary obviously depending on the specifics of the project, but you may need a presenter, you may need a writer, you may need somebody who is the designated gatherer of references or data, you may need a designer if you have a visual aspect like a poster or slides, you may need a final pass editor and submitter, so that is someone who goes over that final product, makes sure it looks good, it's all cohesive, and then actually does the submitting. And you also might need a point person or a leader. This is the person who kind of facilitates communication among group members, organizes the meetings, and is also the person who is in communication with the professor if the group has any questions about the project while they're working. One key thing here is to make sure that everyone has some say in their roles and tasks. Having someone in a role that they do not want is not going to go well. Now remember, most of the time, group members will have multiple roles or multiple tasks, so it's important to distribute the workload as equitably as possible, even if this means some people have one role while others have 2 or 3. The fifth thing that happens during this planning meeting is actually brainstorming, picking the topic. And one thing that's really important is to make sure that everyone in the group has some interest or desire to do the chosen topic. So one of the things I often see is that a strong personality in the group suggests a topic, and the group just goes along with it because they don't really want to argue. Don't let this happen in your group. Yes, it might get you through this first meeting faster, but it will make things much more difficult as you get into the actual work of the project. So dedicate a few minutes to unfiltered brainstorming. Let everyone's voice be heard and get at least 10 ideas down onto paper. Now what you have is a group list. These ideas are now detached from the individuals who proposed them, and you have a list that puts every idea on even ground. And this makes it easier for group members to consider each idea on its own merit, and this makes it more likely that the topic chosen will be a stronger one and will have more buy-in from the different group members. Now, the topic chosen does not have to be every group member's top pick. What you do want to avoid is choosing a topic that 1 or 2 group members are really opposed to, because then it gets to be very difficult to bring them in and get them engaged and productive in the project. So at least pick a topic that nobody hates. And finally, the 6th task of this planning meeting is establishing a clear timeline. Basically, you are putting together mini due dates for yourselves so that you have a finished final product ready to turn in by the time the professor's due date rolls around. This usually involves 3 steps. First, you have to actually break down the project into bite-sized action steps. This isn't, oh, we have to write the paper and we have to create the slides and then we have to give the presentation. Those are pieces of a project. Those are not action steps. There are many, many action steps involved in each one of those tasks. So for example, if you're talking about writing a paper, maybe the first task is find 5 references on the topic, or create an outline, or draft the introductory paragraph. Bite-sized, actionable, manageable pieces of work that are not overwhelming. Second, once you've created these mini action steps, you have some document or a spreadsheet or something where each action step or task has a name attached to it. And these should be tied to the strengths and interests and roles established earlier. Each group member should walk away from this planning meeting with a clear action step in hand so that they know exactly what to do next to start making progress right away. The third step here is actually creating a timeline for those action steps. So putting them in some sort of time-oriented sequence so that you know what needs to be done first and what then builds on that, and then putting defined dates in to make sure you are making progress at a rate needed to be finished and finished well by the due date. So this planning meeting is a lot of work, and again, you might be tempted to skip it. But I promise you, if you take the time to do this, you will have a group that is ready to go, that is bought in and wants to make this a great project, and you'll be much more likely to get through this next during piece with flying colors. So let's talk about some tips for during the actual project work. First, again, it's really important to keep those communication channels open. One of the benefits of doing this, even just sending a quick check-in message, is keeping this project top of mind, because we all know that you are juggling a ton of different classes, a ton of different assignments, a ton of different activities, and it's easy for a project, especially a group project, to slip under the radar. So having an open communication channel where you're getting mini reminders that, oh yeah, I have to be working on that, can go a long way to just keeping things moving. Secondly, and I'm sure you already know this and use this, but shared documents are key. And I like to suggest two different documents. One is a more logistical document, a planning document, and the other is the actual project document. So the first document is what I call the tracker. And this is where you basically have all of the information that you established in that planning meeting. You have your action steps, your assigned roles and tasks, you have your timeline, and you have a space for group members to update their progress and check things off as they get them finished in this tracker document, so that at any given moment, a group member can go into that and see how things are going. The other great thing about this is group members go in and see, oh shoot, everyone else is making progress. I better get on my piece. It helps provide some peer accountability, and this is really valuable when it comes to keeping things moving. The tracker document is also a great place to track meeting information. When meetings were held, what happened in them, for example, what was decided or what work was completed, and also who attended. This is just helpful to be able to keep track of engagement and who might have missed something and may need to be caught up on a piece of information that they weren't at the meeting to get. Now, there should be somebody, the communication leader, the point person, who is watching the tracker and noticing if anything is getting too far behind, too far off that planned timeline. They can check in with the group members, see how things are going, see if they need any extra help, or if the original plans need to be reevaluated because, hey, things happen, time estimates may have been off, and that's okay. But it's important to check in now rather than waiting until the due date looms and then having to go back and recreate a bunch of work that should have been done much earlier. And of course, along with that tracker document, you have the actual project shared document that is open for anyone to edit so that they can add their piece and everyone can see the project, the paper, the presentation coming together as everyone starts to contribute. Now, one thing to note is you want to have some boundaries to when people are allowed to edit other group members' work. You don't want people going in and changing up people's work before maybe they're finished. So this is why I often recommend once everyone's contributions are finished, have that person who has been designated as that final editor and finesser go in and do a glow up. And they are the only one who will be editing other group members' work. And this is obviously with the group's permission when the group is ready. It is really important to make sure that there is a way to go back to previous versions of this shared doc. This is done really easily in Google Docs. This is automatic. But this way, if there is an edit that is made that somebody is not happy with, or if there is, say, an accidental deletion, it is easy to go back and get that rather than just being stuck. Now, the one other thing I recommend is after that person goes in and does their final edit and glow up of the document or the presentation, make sure that every group member see what is going to be submitted and signs off on it in some way. Often I suggest that there is a sign off column in that tracker so that every group member goes in and said, yes, I've looked at this project. I see what's going to be submitted and I am signing off saying I'm happy with it. This final sign off is really helpful at preventing problems after the project is submitted. So the last thing I want to talk about in this during piece is just some general meeting tips. So first, one thing, and it may seem simple, but it works, try and bring food or refreshments to your group meetings. This makes it much more likely that people will come and also makes it more likely people will be in a good mood during the meeting, and that's always helpful for progress. The other thing I really recommend is making sure you have some way to let group members who maybe can't make an in-person meeting be able to participate digitally, whether that's Zoom or some other video chat option. Removing as many barriers as possible to participation is really key. And finally, make sure you have a designated submitter. What you don't want is every group member assuming that somebody else is going to be the one to actually hit that submit button, and then nobody does. All right, so let's talk after. Hopefully everything went well. But if it didn't, if you experienced some frustration, do your best to take a breath and move on. No group project will be perfect, and the nature of working with other people who often have very different personalities and backgrounds and expectations is that there will likely be some challenges. But pat yourself on the back, you made it through, and believe it or not, you likely learned a lot about how to work effectively with others. Now, one key thing to do after the assignment, and specifically after you get your grade, is actually look at the feedback. I know it's always tempting to just say, all right, that project's over. I'm not even going to look at it. I'll just see the grade and then move on. But look at the feedback. What could have been improved? What are some things you could do next time to address any weaknesses or hiccups that came up during the process? This evaluation step is where the learning happens, because we know group projects don't end in college. Life is a group project. So the better team and leadership skills we can develop while still in college, the better we will be at navigating those higher stakes group tasks down the road. And that's it. Now go rock your next group project.